Hey guys, welcome back to the Another Excuse podcast. I'm your host, Byron Greeley, and today's guest is Shoaib Ahmed, the founder of Yellow Hippo. Yellow Hippo is a personal branding agency working with founders focusing on LinkedIn. Shoaib has an interesting perspective. He's not looking to scale Yellow Hippo to millions in revenue and exit with a pretty impressive amount of money. He's looking to prioritize lifestyle and balance, and so he's building Yellow Hippo with that in mind. He has really interesting perspectives on what makes good content and how to do it. And he shares his story of how Yellow Hippo started and his mindset behind the whole thing. It's a really interesting conversation, and I think you'll enjoy it. Enjoy the show. Hey Shoaib, thanks for joining me today. I'm really excited to get into our conversation because I've been following your content for quite a while and I'm really impressed by your drive and work ethic. So to get us started, could you give us a quick rundown of what your business, Yellow Hippo, does?
Yeah, for sure. Well, firstly, thanks for having me on the podcast. So Yellow Hippo is a LinkedIn-first personal branding agency. I set up as a freelancer originally 2.5 years ago, with the goal of helping creators, founders, C-suite executives build their brands on LinkedIn. What I mean by that is building content, crafting their story arc, generating PR, managing their engagement strategies, and really creating visibility so that they're able to attract talent, raise investment, win clients, generate PR, etc. So that's Yellow Hippo. We've worked with over 110 clients in the last 2.5 years. We've generated about 175 million content impressions fully organically and generated about 3 million in revenue for clients over that time period.
Amazing. And just to provide a bit more context for anyone listening, how old are you?
I'm 25. I started the agency at 23. I started it at 22. 25. So I started it kind of a year after university. I worked in a startup, a personal branding agency, as their first employee. And then I kind of set up on my own. It kind of took a different route into the market.
Amazing. And so why Yellow Hippo? What drove you to start a business in this industry?
Yeah, well, firstly, I feel like personal branding is at the intersection of quite a few different things that I really enjoy. So A, community building, B, content, and C, people and marketing to people. And personal branding kind of congeals around all those things. I was in kind of a 9 to 5 prior to setting up on my own, and I just felt like there was more out there for me to grab and to capitalize on. So I wanted more flexibility in terms of my day-to-day work life. I wanted uncapped earning potential. I didn't want to have to wait X amount of months to earn a promotion. I wanted to promote myself. And also, I was building my own personal brand on LinkedIn and doing it quite effectively. So I already had people in my DMs saying, hey, we'd love to work with you. And then I was passing those people on to my boss. And I thought, well, why don't I just work with these people directly? They seem to like what I'm offering in terms of my brand in particular. So I started with 1 to 2 clients. Obviously, it's scaled quite massively. By month 3, I think we had 18 or 20 retainer clients. And then since then, I've kind of scaled, I've descaled, just kind of figuring out what I want to do and what's my purpose in business and what kind of business do I want to build.
You mentioned people started reaching out to you because you started building a personal brand.
Yeah.
What initially drove you to start that personal brand? Was it because you were at that company or you just decided to do something on the side and share your learning?
So I started the company, so I started building my brand 4.5 years ago. So it was actually way before I didn't actually know what personal branding was when I was posting on LinkedIn. It was a very, very different platform at the time. It was kind of very corporate, very, well, not for people like me, ultimately. It was very senior level, kind of people at established companies, and it was either a jobs platform or it was just a company announcement platform. We're hiring,
Yeah.
We've hit this is us winning a business award. And actually over the last 2 years the platform has completely transformed into a creative first platform, as well as being a job board, as well as being an educational platform, etc. I started posting because I was at university when COVID-19 happened, and I thought, okay, I'm going to graduate at the same time as everybody else when the job market is crashing, and I need to do something to stand out. So I went to my careers department at university and said, look, what can I be doing right now? They said two things, build your network and generate work experience. So I did that. I got an internship with a marketing media agency in London. And then at the same time, I was posting things that I was doing at that company on LinkedIn, talking about my experiences, like projects I was working on, and also some reactive commentary on things that were happening in the marketing and media world. So it started very organically in that sense, with no real intentional purpose, but kind of just to build something. There was no end goal, but I just knew I had to be posting online and have some form of presence. I remember for the first 6 months, my posts got like 5, 6, 7 likes, and they were all my friends or colleagues that I'd worked with. And then I just kept doing it, and I got more personal. I studied top creators and studied the algorithm a lot better, and I got comfortable writing online. I became a much better copywriter purely through practice. I must have posted like hundreds and hundreds of posts before I actually thought, okay, there's something in this that I can then A, monetize, but B, actually build a career out of. So it's a very organic story. When I was posting, there was no personal branding agency or personal brander ghostwriter on LinkedIn that I was aware of. It was a very kind of authentic, kind of natural journey into it. And then obviously 2 years ago, it kind of exploded and personal branding just became this huge monster.
Yeah. That's so interesting that you made the decision to do that at quite a young age and like had the initiative to start and the motivation to keep going when there was no like definitive outcome.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of, I started, I stopped, I started, I stopped. It was one of those things that was kind of in the background. But I think the real trigger was when COVID-19 happened, I was put on furlough. So in the UK, the government ran a scheme where companies could kind of lay off employees, but the employee would still get 8% of their salary, and it was paid for by the government, to essentially protect companies from collapse. So I had 8 months where I was not working at this media marketing agency, and I was still getting 8% of my salary. So I thought, okay, I'm going to use this time effectively, and that's when I really started creating content on LinkedIn and taking it seriously. And I created a few resources as well that I shared publicly, which also helped kind of build my authority as a LinkedIn ghostwriter / somebody who understood the platform.
Great. And I always forget to ask this, but is there a story behind the name Yellow Hippo?
Yeah, kind of, but not really. So yellow is my favorite color. Hippo is my favorite animal. One of the first posts that I did on LinkedIn that really kind of performed well, like hundreds of likes, was a photo. And in the photo, so it's a post about the new ways of working. And the photo that I had, I was wearing a yellow jumper with a hippo drawn on it. And it was a jumper that my friend had hand drawn and painted the hippo on a yellow jumper. So it kind of carried a bit of sentimental meaning, but also that was the first picture I put on LinkedIn that was a bit more personal and the first that really generated engagement. So when I was freelancing for 6 months, I didn't have a business name. I was just operating as me. And then I thought, okay, this kind of speaks to that story of how I started, my origin story, but also it's slightly disruptive. It makes you like, it doesn't sound like a personal branding agency, so naturally it was a good conversation starter. It also aligned with the vision that I had at the beginning, which was to build disruptive personal brands, to do something out of the box, and so Yellow Hippo kind of embodies that kind of creative disruption, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, I'm glad I've asked. There's definitely a story there. It's similar to the marketing concept of Purple Cow.
Yeah.
Where it's like, standing out and doing things differently. I like that.
I was introduced to that concept like a few months ago, and I was like, how did I not know this?
Well, you're thinking in the same lines anyway.
Yeah.
And you've grown your profile to like over 40,000 followers. And I know it's difficult to like directly track and attribute opportunities from your profile, but what would you say are some of the opportunities that have come off of you building your personal brand?
I mean, everything. I started my business because I had enough interest through LinkedIn. So all my clients are 100% inbound. I don't do any outreach or cold DMs yet. I haven't needed to, I still don't need to, but maybe one day I might. I was able to also launch my own podcast because I had an audience that was receptive to that kind of content. I signed to a talent agency, a B2B talent agency, to do some deals with and sponsored work with brands. And then I've met the most amazing people who are clients, friends, people I go on holiday with, people I travel with, people I co-work with. Obviously, being a small business owner with a remote team that's kind of dotted about the world, South Africa, Valencia, and then the UK, we rarely get the chance to meet up in person. So having that kind of network of people who push you forward, inspire you, challenge you, is so important. And loads of other things have come out of it as well. Like I've had loads of keynote speaking opportunities. I've guest lectured at universities. I have become a mentor for Virgin Startup. I just got invited to an influencer creator weekend with one of the biggest kind of marketing software platforms in the world. I got flown to Paris for a tech media event. So, everything I do today in business has stemmed from LinkedIn as a platform. And it's just 10 times my growth as a person, as a business owner, my career, my salary, every aspect of a typical 20-year-old's life as someone in their 20s. Everything has been accelerated and bettered through using the platform strategically to get fast results.
Yeah, I think people don't realize how many opportunities can come from building a personal brand. Well, and like you said, the sentiment is changing. People are realizing it now with people like Mr. Beast and other big profiles where they are building brands and products off the back of their personal brands.
Yeah.
So it's becoming a lot more popular, but a lot of people are sort of sleeping on the concept.
Yeah, 100%.
And many people actually are quite hesitant to get started. There's many fears involved or worries that I have nothing to say, or why would anyone listen to me? All of those negative thoughts. And did you have any apprehensions about posting online when you started?
No, funnily enough. I think the reason why that was because when I was posting, I wasn't in a sea of other people doing the same thing. It felt quite novel to me to just post on LinkedIn. I wasn't comparing myself to other people or their growth trajectory. I didn't have a goal I wanted to monetize by month 3. I want to do this, this, and this. It was just honestly, just a bit of fun and a bit of an experiment. So at the time, I got addicted to the learning of it. I was like, oh, this is a new platform. It's a new challenge for me. I gamified it. I was studying my posts, why certain ones were performing, why others weren't. And also I was doing something to talk about. I wasn't just talking for the sake of talking because somebody's told you to build a personal brand. I think that's terrible advice. I think you should always post once you've at least done something. Today it's easy to build a brand around kind of key thought leadership themes, right? Like entrepreneurship, leadership, culture, building a team. But you could do that very successfully without having a business. But that's not going to serve you long term. That's not going to help you monetize. It's going to help you get likes and engagement, but it's not going to convert into opportunities. So I was substantiating what I was saying with things that I was doing in real time. Although I was just an intern at a marketing agency at the lowest rank of a 50-person team, what I was doing, I was sharing and I was talking about it and what I've learned and the things that were going well, things that weren't working. And so I was almost documenting the journey in public. And I think that's a great way to build if you're documenting your day-to-day, but make sure you have something to document at the same time. So if you don't have experience, get the experience first. Reach out to people, do an internship, shadow somebody at work, create something online, a social media page, a WordPress blog, a website, design something for your portfolio, have something that you can then add commentary on. And that's a great way to start posting, because a lot of the time people start but they don't know what to post. Talk about what you're doing yourself, your experiences, and then over time you can develop those more kind of authoritative thought leadership style pieces because you've got the data, the results, or the experience to back you up.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a lot more about doing than just coming up with ideas and writing stuff for the sake of it.
Yeah, there's hundreds of people, well, millions of people posting on LinkedIn, but some are just posting about the themes, and some are embedding authority through demonstrating those themes. And I think there's a big difference there. And I think now, because it's more competitive as a platform for content creators, those who are demonstrating their thought leadership through real life examples, stories, experiences are going to perform better and see more success, traction, engagement, opportunities than those who are simply talking about themes in a vacuum. So that would be my advice to people starting out.
Yeah, I agree. And you touched on your intentionality and how you paid attention to every little detail so you could reiterate and improve.
Yeah.
But currently, what sort of processes or systems do you have in place in order to stay consistent and continue to improve on your content?
Yeah. So, day-to-day business is chaotic, to say the least. And so, at the beginning, I had no systems, no processes, nothing. There was no documenting of what I was doing, apart from on LinkedIn. The actual business side of things, there wasn't much being done in terms of documentation. So today, everything we do is we try to automate processes, we try to remove repetition, eliminate admin or outsource or delegate to people, and make sure that my focus is on things that actually serve business revenue and things that I'm good at doing. So a few things that we've implemented. One is a really solid onboarding process where my team can fully onboard a client without too much of my input. And that's because we have systems, we have templated emails, we have an onboarding brochure, like an onboarding pack. We have like Google surveys that we send to clients, all templatized, that can just be edited and tweaked slightly per client. We have checklists, kind of SOPs for people in the team to use. We have training documents, checklists to follow. Everything's organized in shared folders, so the team has full accessibility to everything. So, we're not wasting time saying, can you send me this? Can you give me permission to have this? Everything kind of is there, and it's more of a case of, okay, let's use that now and implement it and do it. It's more about execution. So there's some of the things I think that we've implemented, and anything else I've kind of outsourced where appropriate. So video editing, for example, I don't do any video editing myself. My podcast, I go to a studio. I don't film anything or manage the audio. I have engineers who do that. I have editors who create it. I even have VAs who upload the content onto social media platforms. So yeah, outsource as much as you can and really focus on A, what you're good at, and B, what has high ROI for the effort required.
In the early stages compared to now, how noticeable was the difference from once you started putting these processes and systems in place for you to sort of scale and take on more clients?
Oh, like massive. So at the beginning, I had... it was just chaos. It was complete chaos. It was me working 8-hour days, drinking 4 cans of Red Bull a day, getting 3-4 hours sleep, and constantly being in the cycle of like chasing my to-do list. Don't get me wrong. Today my to-do list is huge, and it never goes down because new things always get added. However, I'm able to finish work at 5 p.m. and live my life. I'm able to live my life on weekends and not think about work too much. And that's because I've saved so much time. I've spent a little bit more money, but I've saved time and I've increased revenue. So the profitability has actually increased. I make more money, but I work fewer hours. And I also get to work on things that I'm good at. So therefore, it's not a drain on my energy, my headspace. And I can just have more time to work on the business rather than in the business 24/7. So they're the kind of biggest improvements. But it's converted into, more revenue, like happier day-to-day life, more seamless business, and just better results for clients as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I'm interested in when that shift happened, because you can be caught in that endless loop of just like, ticking off your to-do list, drinking copious amounts of Red Bull. But where did the shift happen where you decided, okay, I need to put some processes in place so I can bring someone on board and they just can run with things?
Yeah, probably about 3 months in, business got busy, which is obviously a privilege, and it's not normal that you grow so fast in such a short period of time. So I got some VAs to help with some of my kind of LinkedIn admin. I brought in my first hire was in June, so June, July, so probably about 6 months into the business. Starting as part-time freelancer, then coming on full-time. In September of the first year, I also hired my second employee. I think September, October time, second employee full-time. It was a realization that I was working crazy amounts, and it was just purely unrealistic for me to continue. Not because the business couldn't continue, but it was more so I couldn't function as the driver of the business for so long. It was amazing. Like, I don't regret the fast growth. I don't regret those long hours, the hard days. It had to be done at that time. But to do that consistently long term, it just wasn't sustainable. Like, it wasn't a good business model, and it just wasn't going to get me the results for clients that I wanted. So I had just this dilemma of I either bring someone on board or I crash and burn out. Obviously, I chose to bring
easy
someone
decision.
on board. Yeah. I think a lot of people go through that process though, and people came up after me and said, you run a personal branding agency. I've just started one. I'm on a similar growth trajectory to you, and I'm currently in the business 24/7. How do I get out of this cycle? And I gave the same advice to all of them, and nobody listened. Because you have to live through that until you have that moment where you're like, shit, I need to deal with this myself. There's so much advice telling you to set boundaries, to avoid burnout, to make sure you're creating systems and ops as you go. But it's so easy to get lost in that process. And I think the adrenaline as well, you think you're going to be able to do this forever. I used to think if I got another lead, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll take this client on. I've got 24 hours in the day. I'm only using 17 at the moment. What's another client? That was literally my mindset. I was like, oh, I could take on loads of clients. I'll just find a way to work quicker or increase output. But that obviously doesn't work. You hit a point where you have to step back and think, what am I building and why am I building? What is the reason I'm doing this? Is it just purely for revenue? Which for me, it definitely wasn't. It was more like the lifestyle, the freedom, the security. And so therefore I transitioned to allow myself to get the things that I started the business for.
Great. And you touched on you getting inbound after you built your brand a little bit and then deciding to make the shift. But what gave you the confidence that you had the capabilities to pull it off? Was it just what you'd built previously and you thought, okay, I can now do this for others?
I worked in personal branding, I'd managed clients, I'd actually done the work that I was going to then sell for other people prior to me starting as a freelancer. I'd proven my ability to do that job well and get results. And I already had leads in my inbox before I decided to start a business. I never planned to go freelance until I realized this is an opportunity too good to say no to. So when I did start freelancing, I already had 2 to 3 clients some through referrals. One was one of my friends that I'd made on LinkedIn. He was like, I'll help you set up a business. I'll be your first client. So it's really the power of your network at the beginning. And then once I got 2 to 3 clients, delivered amazing results for them, I converted that into a case study and then shared it on LinkedIn, talked about my process, how we did it, the transformation, their origin story, the benefits that they've seen through personal branding. And I just repeated that formula. Massively undercharged at the beginning as well. Slightly out of naivety, but also because I wanted to prove myself before I started charging lots of money. And then over time, I've obviously increased my prices because I've proven what I do works and that it generates results for clients. So at the beginning, I guess it was a bit of my network, some of the results I'd already delivered, and then just taking 1 or 2 clients and doing a really, really good job, and then scaling incrementally.
And many people, everyone has a different view on what they want to get out of personal branding, and some people don't understand to the full extent of either its capabilities or what's possible, or they have expectations that are unrealistic. So when you started taking on those first clients, did you pick and choose it all and have an ideal client that you wanted to work with, that they were at a certain account size, or did you just take on anyone and be like, I'll work with you?
I took on anyone. I took on anyone who wanted somebody to manage their personal brand. And that was the best thing I ever did because I didn't niche down. Even to this day, like currently, the kind of 12 retainer clients we have. We have one in we have two in the creator economy as like big Instagram influencers. We have one who runs a video production studio. We have one who runs a tech startup. We have one who's a D&I recruiter. We have one who started a business in the food and drink space. We have one who's a marketing agency. So you can see like the variety of people that we work with. And that's great because there's fundamental principles of personal branding on LinkedIn that work. And so we follow those principles and we apply them to anybody in any niche, in any industry, and obviously personalize the principles for their audience, for their goals, objectives. But I think personal branding in itself is it's not just for a certain type of person. Everybody can build their personal brand. It's more just using the logics and principles of storytelling, good hooks, good copywriting, using marketing psychology techniques, writing content that is able to tell effective stories, that has high relatability, that agitates people's pain points, that sets up a villain in the post. So those are the types of things we work with. So at the beginning, I took on everybody and anyone. And I think it was great because I was able to prove that I could get results for a life coach, but then also an e-commerce brand owner, and then also a learning development platform. And so I think that for me was actually a good thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. But now at this point, are there some cases where people aren't doing the doing side, sort of holding up their end of the bargain, and so it makes your life a lot more difficult to create content that actually performs for them?
Yeah, that is definitely a thing. And over time, I've just had to get rid of those clients because if I'm not able to do my best work for them, I'm very honest in the conversations we have. I'm like, look, you're not getting the results you should be getting because you're not allowing me to do my bit to get those results. And so unless you're fully invested in personal brand building, I don't think you should half-ass it because it's your brand at the end of the day, and what you're putting out there is going to, it's a reflection of who you are. So what you post today could stick in someone's mind for 3 years. That is how that one post that you've kind of flippantly put out there. That is how they might remember you or associate you to certain things, right? So when you do personal branding, you have to be intentional. So now I don't specify I'm not selective about the industry. I'm more selective about the person, their goals, their willingness to contribute and be active, and the reason why they're building a personal brand. Are they going to be a great client to work with in terms of that relationship? Do they give me autonomy? Do they trust the work that I do? Are they communicative and contributing ideas? Are they open enough and transparent enough to share bits of their life with me? Because I need to know them to be able to create their brand. That's kind of what I look for. And if I don't get it now, I don't take on the client, or I let them go.
Great. And fast forward to now, Yellow Hippo looks like it's doing great. Could you give us a quick rundown of how big the company is? I know you said you have 12 retainer clients, but I know you also have some other service offerings. And how do you guys make money?
Yeah, so we have our core kind of revenue comes through retainer clients. So that's kind of the bulk. That's probably about 75% of our revenue. So that retainer package, we have 3 packages, and it's a mixture of ghostwriting, strategy, and also engagement. So it's a kind of a full 360 LinkedIn personal brand growth package. We also do coaching, which is a new service that I kind of just started the last 2 months, which is a one-to-one coaching session with me to go through those principles of LinkedIn growth, to go through how to generate results, optimize your profile, create conversion style content, very much data driven and very much backed by evidence, case studies, examples, checklists, frameworks, etc. That, recently has been quite popular, but that's probably currently only about 5-10% of our maybe 5%, 10% of our revenue, but that I imagine is going to drastically grow once I properly market it. And then we also do masterclasses, company trainings, another 5-10% of our revenue. And then I do a lot of ghostwriting packages where it's just a one-off package where I have a 2-hour research call with somebody, I batch create content, and I just give it to them. And there's no kind of management of them. It's just a ghostwriting job. So that's kind of where Yellow Hippo's revenue kind of comes from if we look at it on a pie chart. But then there's other things that, come in, for example, brand deals, sponsored posts, more keynote speaking, and kind of odd jobs that clients trust me to do. So, for example, we've written TikTok scripts for clients, we've built websites for clients, we've run photo creative shoots, video shoots. None of that is a service that we offer. But if one of our existing clients says, look, I love what you guys have done with my brand, can you support me on this? We will. Because our team is made up of marketers. Although we're a personal branding agency, I've worked in a marketing media agency before. My team have worked on long-form editorial copywriting. They've done strategy work across different social media platforms. So we're able to kind of adapt for clients wherever we think we could be beneficial to them. And yeah, we have a team of three full-time, and then I have an executive assistant who supports me. My intentions are not to scale the business. It's actually to stabilize, and instead of chasing revenue, what I'm chasing is flexibility and time freedom. So they are my ultimate goals. It's funny because a lot of people ask, like, how much revenue do you guys do? And I'm like, why is that the marker of success? Like, why is that the most important thing you ask? I've started asking people, like, how happy are you? Or, like, how much time do you have to invest in your hobbies? How much time this week did you spend with the people you really love? Because I think there's those way better markers of success. I'm transparent about our revenue. We were about 300k revenue per year. But I'm always honest about, I don't care about getting more revenue. I would happily sacrifice some of that revenue to invest in other parts of my life, because my career and work is just one component. We have very high profitability because we're all remote, small team. We're highly effective and efficient with the work that we do. But yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. And well, particularly on LinkedIn, well, it is shifting and people are sharing more diverse stories, but a lot of the messaging on LinkedIn is to drive revenue and scale companies and exit for lots of money. So you're kind of counter to the norm, which I find really interesting. And I can imagine a lot of people, well, it's obvious, but people must resonate with that sort of message too. It's quite refreshing.
Yeah, 100%. Everybody has different goals, right? So I have friends who I've known for years who have just set up a personal branding agency about a year ago. I'll shout them out: the Ratcliffe brothers, Niall Ratcliffe and Morgan, who have gone down the scaling route, right? They're in this for long term with probably the intention of exiting the business, right? They've built 10, 15 plus people in their team. They scaled quite aggressively, and they've built that kind of empire business, right? That big business agency model, right? I offer a very, very similar service, work with much fewer clients, for a much smaller team, and much less probably recurring revenue. However, I focused on my time freedom. I probably work fewer hours than them. I probably have more time to invest in hobbies, and I probably have more flexibility with who I work with, how I work, when I work, where I work, right? So we're both doing a similar thing, but have completely different goals. Neither is wrong, neither is right. I think we just should put equal kind of credibility to people who don't want to scale aggressively financially and want to invest in different areas. I think there's a lot of pressure when you start out in business to build quickly, scale your team, your headcount, raise millions in investment, and then in 10 years down the line, exit the business for a sell. Personally, I just didn't want to wait. I didn't want to sacrifice 10 years of my life to that aggressive kind of running on a hamster wheel to potentially get that exit one day. If I can live a really kind of fulfilled, happy, flexible life today and still live comfortably and be financially secure and do all the things that I enjoy, I just wanted to start that from day one. So that's the kind of lifestyle that I'm building within my business. But neither's wrong or right. But like you said, yeah, a lot of people relate to the messaging that I'm currently putting out on LinkedIn because it's not the norm, I would say.
Yeah. But you said you had this sort of view and approach from day one, but you also touched on that you scaled too fast at one point and then brought it back, and now you're looking for stability. So was there ever a temptation, or was it just because you were taking on a whole lot of clients and you were like,
Yeah, there was
let's see what happens?
definitely a temptation. Even to this day, sometimes I like say yes to something, and then a month later, I'm like, why did I say yes to that? The only reason I said yes to that was for the revenue. Bad choice, Shoaib. Bad choice. So it's hard to say no to revenue when you don't come from loads of money and then money is presented to you and it's easy to take. It's very hard to say no to that, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the beginning, I said yes to everything because I needed to say yes. But I think 2.5 years in now, I've established enough credibility and also grown myself in terms of resilience, like my emotional strength, and my confidence to know that if I lost everything tomorrow, I would be fine. If my business went down literally from tomorrow, I would be fine. You know what? I'd probably take a nice long holiday. I'd relax a little bit and then I'd rebuild it. And I think having that like confidence that instead of thinking what's the worst that can happen, think what's the best that can happen. That reframe is like so powerful. So yeah, I think for me, I did scale too fast until I realised I'm just scaling for the sake of scaling revenue when there's other things I want in life, and why don't I chase them? And since I've done that, like everything's just got so much better.
I'm sure that's amazing. And I'd like to touch on your podcast. You mentioned it earlier, called Rebels, but why add another thing to your plate? Or is that part of the balance and you get a lot out of it?
Good question. At the beginning, I loved what I was doing, but I hit that point where I was like, I'm just a slave to my business. So I needed to do something drastic to get me out of it and help me fall back in love with what I was doing. So I needed something else to kind of flex some creativity on. And so the podcast kind of seemed like a great fit. I've never done a podcast before. I also had listened to maybe one podcast before I started my own podcast. I just thought, you know what,
That's so interesting.
I was like, this is going to be just like a whole lot of fun. And to this day, I'm very open about my podcast costs me money. I do not profit off my podcast, but I love doing it. I love the conversations I have. I learn so much from it. And also there's like soft benefits, right? Once I started my podcast, I realized my followers grew much quicker. I got more engagement on my content. I got people reaching out to me who otherwise wouldn't reach out to me because my podcast added a lot of credibility based on the guests that I was getting. It was a studio podcast in a high quality 4K footage, very well edited, really impactful storytelling. So I was almost showcasing personal brand through video. So although I don't actually profit off that and I spend money, I think the long-term payoff has been really good in terms of my credibility, my positioning in the market, my differentiator in the personal branding space. And I've also built some great relationships with the people that I've had on the podcast as well, which I also value as well. Podcast, so now we're in season 2. Season 1 went really smoothly, really good feedback, very high quality. I was really proud of what I'd created. Season 2 is currently in the process. So we've released one episode. One episode gets released next week, but I'm taking it much slower this time round, and I've not given myself strict kind of like deadlines to follow. The last episode I released was about 6 weeks ago, so it's been ages. That typically I'd be like, no, you need to release it every week, but I'm actually allowing myself to treat this podcast as a fun side hustle. I'm not obsessed about monetization, views, clicks, listens, metrics, because as soon as you do that, you fall out of love with it. And Yellow Hippo is obviously my priority. I'm a solo entrepreneur as well in terms of I don't have a co-founder, so everything kind of has to run through me. So I didn't want to deflect my energy too much, but I've maintained the quality of each episode. So the episode that drops like next week, I don't know when our episode goes out, but it's a really fun episode for episode 2 of my podcast, and I'm really proud of like the value in there and the intensity of the topics we spoke about. So now I've flipped the script. Instead of like quantity of output, I'm more focusing on the quality and what people will get from it.
That's so interesting. Because I can obviously see where you're coming from. But I've taken the slightly different approach where I'm trying to stick to a weekly cadence.
Yeah.
Because at the point I felt I was at, part of starting the podcast was to get better at like speaking, having conversations, speaking about topics I really enjoy. And I edit it myself. So putting in those reps and watching myself back, I felt like it was a really useful tool to just improve on things that I felt like I was weak at.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to do that. Like on a personal level, I would love to get involved in it to that level. But I just don't have the time to do it, and I've got to be realistic with Yellow Hippo is a full-time business. It's a full-time job. So the podcast has to fit around that for now. In the future, like next year, I've got some plans for really scaling the podcast and shifting my kind of working hours and where my time goes, which is very exciting. But at least for this year, I'm giving myself some breathing space so I can build sustainably again. Again, I'm not trying to grow quickly in anything that I do. It's like I'm playing a long game here.
Yeah, and also with you making the decision to record in a studio, that adds an extra level of complexity, and you having to make the effort to go out there, get the guest there if it's in person. But then also, like for scaling, I can imagine you're probably going to get some booking assistant in place or something where you can batch record a whole lot of episodes on one day, so then you've sorted for the month or whatever it is. But yeah, it's a lot more logistics to think about, and definitely not what you want to prioritize at the moment.
Yeah.
And so you touched on like the podcast being a great way to show people the value of video in building a personal brand. And I'm sure you're aware of LinkedIn now introducing the scrollable video feature. So I'm curious, is that something you're thinking about adding as a service offering, or something that you recommend to your existing clients? Like, how are you thinking about that feature?
Yeah. It's not something we're offering as a service because I'm not a video expert. I'm not a videographer. I'm not an editor either. I know where my strengths lie and I will focus on those. However, I have videographers that I've partnered with in the past who will help clients create video content, but it's going to be kind of an external thing, right? They work with me to build their brand. I guide them. I write scripts. I write the captions for the video. I do the creative direction, but the logistics of filming, editing, booking studios is outsourced. I actually, funnily enough, just before this call, I had a call with a videographer because I'm filming some content in a couple of weeks for my own brand. So yeah, video is super important. I think it adds a layer of credibility. It's great for people to hear you speak on camera. It conveys more personality. And it just adds a different kind of dynamic to people when they view your content. They see you in a different light. So yeah, I'm actually going to be sharing a lot more content in August, September. Way more video content on my own page as well.
Awesome. And before we wrap up, I have a few questions just about the future. Like, what are your goals for Yellow Hippo?
My goals for Yellow Hippo are to build a sustainable business that drives good revenue that allows me to have a very fulfilled, flexible, freedom-based lifestyle, where I can wake up each day and I'm not stuck to having to open my laptop at a set time or jump on this call at a set time, where I dictate kind of my working schedule, which is a very idealistic kind of world to live in as a 25-year-old, trying to live like a retired lifestyle at this age. But I think you can do that I think I can do that if I intentionally work towards it. In terms of Yellow Hippo, I want to branch out some of my service offerings, diversify some of those, and grow my brand as a creator whilst continuing to do really, really good work for few clients. I don't want to have 50 clients and spread my energy across them. I'd rather work very selectively with 3 or 4 and do an amazing job, and then spend that time on other projects.
Interesting. And is like, if you get to that point to achieve your goal where you're like semi-retired and the business is kind of running itself, but you're focusing on what you want to focus on, We hear those stories of founders almost as they exit a company or something, they get really bored really quickly and they want to turn their attention to something else. So is there a possibility of you turning your attention to another business one day, or have you explored any ideas, or is it just focusing on Yellow Hippo?
I think whatever I do will be in the personal branding space. Definitely, I will be doing personal branding delivery, content work for clients. That's not changing. I might work with fewer clients in the future, but I will still have that as a primary service. I think I haven't, up until this point, had enough time to think about other opportunities, whether that's investing more in my podcast and giving that a bigger push, or whether it's doing more speaking gigs, coaching, that kind of thing, or potentially some events, some live events.
Awesome. And what's your favorite part about what you do?
I would say like the self-growth that comes with having a business. Like the impact it's had on me, and all my clients obviously are successful business owners. So I am so lucky. Like I have the best job in the world. I have access to 15 or so entrepreneurs from all different industries, from all walks of life, with different goals, stories, backgrounds, who are literally like mentors to me, because they tell me, how they built their business, how they run a team, how they create culture, how they please clients. All the mistakes they make, they share them with me because I have to create content about it. But in that process, I'm constantly learning. I'm like, oh, this is a really cool story. Oh, they give me this bit of insight, which somebody else might have to pay thousands of pounds to get access to. And I get it via WhatsApp voicemail every other day. So that's the best part of the job, the learning.
Amazing. And before I end every conversation, I usually ask my guests if they have a question for me.
Nice. Okay. Ooh, I wasn't expecting that one. Okay, my question would be, and you don't say this one off, obviously, but what has been the best episode you've recorded on your podcast so far, and why? Or who's been the best guest?
Oh, so there's a few that come to mind because they were kind of moonshots in a way, if that makes sense. Because in my podcast outreach, like in the growth phase that I'm in, it's like a process of leveling up guests in terms of account size and what they do, how much revenue their company's making, all of those sort of aspects. And the podcast needs to be interesting enough for them to come on. And so I'd say you are one of those sort of moonshot outreach messages that I took. And so I appreciate you coming on. And there's a couple more. I'm not sure if you know Stanley from the Attention Seeker Agency. He's a New Zealander. He was another great episode. And Yasin Mameri, who's pretty big on TikTok and Instagram. I think what I've found is when people are or have been running companies for quite a while, and they're also in the content creation space, they're very good at delivering their ideas thoughtfully and concisely, because they're doing it over and over again every day. They're putting in the reps. They know how to speak about the points and the questions that I ask them. So I feel like there's a lot of value packed into those episodes because they're so comfortable just delivering that message. So I'd say, just like this episode, I think it was great. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks for joining me today, Shoaib. I really appreciate it. If people want to find out more about Yellow Hippo and the Rebels podcast or anything else you're working on, where can they do so?
They can check me out on LinkedIn, Shoaib Ahmed. Everything is there in my bio, all the links you could possibly need to visit my website, to check out the podcast. It's Rebels by Shoaib Ahmed on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, Amazon. Basically, it's everywhere. So just LinkedIn primarily.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Shoaib. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I really appreciate you making it all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed the episode. One more quick reminder before you go. I have a weekly newsletter by the same name, Another Excuse, where I cover 4 topics: something that has changed my perception, a tool that could be useful to you, content that is actually worth consuming, and a concept that I try break down and explain. If this sounds of any interest to you and you need a kick up the arse, then you can subscribe at the link below. Thanks for joining me again, and I'll see you next week.